Hello, my name is Jeff Scott, Associate State Director for AARP Illinois. I want to welcome you to this important live conversation about food insecurity and the supply chain here in the U.S. and Illinois. Today, I'm live with the Illinois Manufacturer Association's President and CEO, Mark Dinsler, the Illinois Retail Merchants Association President and CEO, Rob Carr, as well as the Executive Director of the Illinois Trucking Association. We'll be discussing how reliable the food supply is in the United States and how we can depend on the fact that there is a network that will not only get food and other products to the stores, but get them on the shelves. We'll also be addressing your questions. So if you want to, and you would be inclined, post your question on our Facebook Live or comment, and we'll get to those in a few minutes. AARP is a nonprofit, nonpartisan member organization, has been working to promote the health and well-being of older Americans for more than 60 years. During these trying times, AARP is providing information and resources to help older adults and those caring for them protect themselves from food insecurity. If you'd like to stay on top of the most recent and up-to-date information after this event, you can visit AARP's Foundation's food security site online at aarp.org/AARP-Foundation to learn more. Before we get started, I have an important video from the AARP Foundation concerning this very topic. Thank you. I also want to invite you to stay tuned for another video at the end of this event. We have some important information from Dr. Ezike from the Illinois Department of Health. She's going to be talking about booster shots and has some good information to hopefully answer some questions for our members. Again, that'll be at the end of the event. And finally, before I introduce our guests today, I want to take just a moment and thank all the brave veterans who have served this great nation. On Veterans Day, we want to thank you for your service, and we honor you on your special day. Thank you. Now, AARP is fortunate today to have joining us three special guests from the Illinois Manufacturing Association, from the Illinois Retail Merchants Association, and also from the Illinois Trucking Association. I'm going to let them introduce themselves in a minute, but the IMA, IRMA, and ITA serve as a voice of Illinois manufacturing, retailing, and trucking industries, and are enormous influencers for their members at the Capitol and all around the state of Illinois. Thank you, Rob, Mark, and Matt, for taking time out what I know is a very hectic and busy schedule that you all three have. I'm going to start with you, Mark. I'm going to give you a couple minutes to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Jeff. And first, let me join you in wishing all the veterans a happy Veterans Day, for all the courageous women and men who proudly worn our nation's uniform, especially those in the greatest generation. We're grateful for your service and owe you a debt of gratitude. Jeff, thanks to you and AARP for hosting this important topic on supply chain management, food security, and other issues that are impacting our nation. Just briefly, founded in 1893, the Illinois Manufacturers Association is the oldest and one of the largest state manufacturing associations in the United States today. We represent more than 4,000 member companies and facilities across the entire state of Illinois, who employ about 555,000 women and men on factory floors today, who provide the single largest share of our gross state product, about 12.5%. Over the last 18 months, manufacturers have led our nation forward during the worst economic and health crisis that we've seen in generations. Whether it's creation of life-saving vaccines that are the best way out of this pandemic, equipping our first responders and our healthcare workers, or stocking our stores with safe and nutritious food and other essential products. What I would tell you, and I know we're going to have this discussion, is there are plenty of products being made today by American manufacturers, plenty of food and other essential supplies. We just encourage people, don't hoard. You don't need to hoard products like we saw in the early days of the pandemic, because there's plenty of products that are being created today. But today we're working as quickly as possible to make these products, get them on Matt's truck so they can get to Rob's stores. And with that, I'm very happy to be part of today's conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Rob?
Hi, Jeff. Thanks for having us. We've done this in the past, and we appreciate the partnership with AARP. I think it's important when we bring different sectors together like this to answer the concerns of your membership, and we're happy to do so and appreciate you thinking of us. I'd also like to echo our thanks for those veterans among us who have given so much, and particularly those who gave the ultimate sacrifice for the freedoms we enjoy today. So we honor them and their sacrifice and services as well. Retail, IRMA represents retailers of all types and sizes. We have a particularly robust grocery sector, but also restaurants, convenience stores, pharmacies, hardware stores, you name it, we have it in our membership. Like Mark and Matt's organizations, we have been involved since really even before everyone understood how the true impact of this pandemic, in working with the governor's office, the federal government, and others to smooth the supply chain, to make changes that would push more product through the supply chain. And I think that has borne fruit for all of us. Our members, retail members for the state of Illinois, we're the second largest generator of tax revenue for local governments, or for state government, and the largest for local governments. I think the lesson there is that as goes retail, so goes the services that many of your members rely upon. Plus, we employ just over 20% of the state's workforce. So, when you think about the three sectors that are represented here, we really are integral to the health and welfare of all of our members, whether it's, in this case, this topic, food security, or also providing medicines and medical services, such as we do at our pharmacies. So we appreciate the chance to be with you, to talk to your membership, and hear and answer their concerns. Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks, Rob. And then Matt, tell us about your association and introduce yourself.
Great, Jeff. Thank you so much for having me on. It's so great to be with your members, and I'm in great company with Mr. Carr, Mr. Densler, and I hope your members know, Jeff, what a great job you do for the organization as well. So thanks for being on here. And again, we can't echo enough Veterans Day, right? What a fantastic celebration of the men and women who ensure our freedom. So thanks to all of our veterans out there. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. And as Rob and Mark said, we're kind of the link between these guys. If it wasn't for trucking, we couldn't get the manufacturer stuff to the retailer. We can't get manufacturer stuff to other manufacturers. And so the trucking industry in Illinois is huge. A lot of people don't realize that over 70% of our nation's freight goes on a truck. We're more than double all the other modes combined. So we're vitally important. I think everybody's realized how important that trucking industry has been throughout this pandemic. As people were raiding the grocery store shelves last year, we kept delivering more product. Their guys kept making product, and we kept bringing it to Rob's guys, and they kept selling it so that everybody had the essentials that they need. But the trucking industry is a great industry in Illinois. We represent all the trucking companies in Illinois, as well as the trucking companies in other states that operate here. All told, our federation's got 37,000 trucking companies. And what I always remind people who maybe aren't real familiar with the trucking industry is every time you're out there on the highway and you see one of those large trucks, just remember that truck is there because you want something or you need something. You need medicine, you need food, you need gasoline, you need clothes. That's your stuff that's out there on the highway with you. We just got it wrapped up, packaged up nice and neat there in a truck, and we're delivering it for you. So glad to be here, and I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks, guys. And thank you for being with us this morning. I want to remind everybody watching us today that please put your comment or question in the Facebook feed, and we'll be getting to some of those in just a minute. Rob, to go on what you said, we did have this conversation. It was you, Mark, and myself had this conversation back in July of 2020. So that was kind of more on the, the pandemic was kind of newer then. There were, I think the landscape has changed a lot since then. We're looking at different issues and maybe different problems. But that's kind of some of the stuff we want to get into today. So again, thanks for being here. As you guys have also alluded to, your association members were the ones who kept this state rolling through these past 20 months and through the pandemic. And everybody is surely appreciative of all the effort that your members have put forward to make that happen. And kind of with that, I want to ask you, and I'm going to go through all three of you, and I'm going to start with you again, Mark. What is your organization, from your organizational perspective, what have you learned in the past 20 months, and what do you see in maybe the near future and maybe farther out?
Sure. Thanks, Jeff. It's a great question. And everything, hindsight is 2020, as they say. And, many people use kind of the statement, we were building the plane as we were flying it during the pandemic. We had not been through an experience like this and didn't really have a guidebook or a playbook. But I think what I would tell you from the manufacturing perspective is, if the pandemic has taught us anything or taught our nation anything, it's the need for a strong American manufacturing sector. So we're not so reliant on products coming from overseas. While international trade is critically important, we need to make sure that we have manufacturing right here at home in our own backyard. And we also, I think, from the manufacturing perspective, there's a recognition that you have to diversify a little bit. For so many years, manufacturers had focused on kind of just-in-time delivery and lean manufacturing and really reducing their supply chain. And I think they've learned that you can't be so reliant on just one or two suppliers for a key part, because if that facility, whether it's in the United States or overseas, shuts down, that can impact your entire operation. And you can just look at the microchip issue, for example, where the chip producers overseas started producing chips, not for autos, but for other products that consumers are wanting. And now today in the auto sector, we're really struggling to get those companies to start making chips for the auto sector again. They're largely made overseas. And so again, I think the lesson of reshoring manufacturing jobs in the United States, in increasing diversity a little bit. Just a couple of bits of good news. In the third quarter of 2021, manufacturing production exceeded what it was before the pandemic. So we have fully recovered, within about 18 months from what we had. There are significant supply chain operations that continue. I know we're going to get into that a little bit, and workforce challenges that remain. In the most recent Institute for Supply Chain Management report, supplier deliveries were the slowest since 1974, with backlogs of orders and customer inventories. Prices are rising dramatically, as we all know, and we're starting to see rapid inflation. So those are all things that we're going to have to address here in the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. But Jeff, the other thing I would just share with your members, when we talk to manufacturers across the state and country, is they don't really see a complete slowing or easing of the supply chain issue, probably until at least the middle of 2022. I know we're all working collectively on it, and I know we're going to get into the supply chain issue specifically, but we don't really see that being broken or really eliminated until at least the middle of 2022.
Wow. Some good news, bad news there. Thank you. Rob, from the retailers, what are you seeing?
Well, I think I'd start with a little bit of a glass half full look. I think for all the challenges we're talking about, I'm amazed just how resilient the supply chain actually is. I think when we step back and take a perspective, and some of your members will have this perspective, this is the greatest disruption since World War II, by far. And yet, we're not going hungry. We're not going without medicine. I'm not suggesting there's not challenges. Some of your members experience some of those challenges, but we are not experiencing that. You read back to the annals of World War II, right, when they were having to make flourless cake and do other things, right? And so I think it does speak well that for all our problems, it's stretched thin, but it's holding up. And I think that speaks to I think we've also experienced in the retail sector, and I think it shows through in Matt's sector and Mark's as well, the resiliency and the creativity of the American businessman and woman, their employees. They have endured a great deal. They have had, as Mark said, to build the plane on the fly, to make do with whatever they can make do with. We've seen in the retail sector, small and large retailers take concepts and just say, forget it. We can't let the perfect get in the way, and just put in place remote selling options that they had only been contemplating and thought would take years, and they did it in a matter of weeks or months. And those are just some of the steps they've taken. So I would just urge everyone to look back and at least say, we might have challenges, but we're not doing so badly.
Right. The mother invention, right? So,
Yep.
Matt, go to you, and you've already discussed, how important the trucking, and everybody knows that. And I know you guys see some specific maybe issues with getting enough truckers and that sort of thing. But what have you learned, I guess, through the past months, and what are you seeing?
Yeah, I think that certainly, I hope everybody learned just how important the trucking industry is. As Rob pointed out, we were still able to get stuff on the shelves, and it may not always been the brand that you wanted, but to my knowledge, no one ran out of food. You just may have had to eat chicken instead of pork that week. In our industry, I think we've learned just how important our workforce is. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about workforce and how that's creating some problems with the supply chain today. As I was on the news yesterday in Chicago, and I told folks there, I said, we had a workforce shortage before workforce shortages were cool. We've had a shortage in the trucking industry of truck drivers for decades. We went into this year short 60,000 truck drivers. We have now bumped that up to 80,000. And the main reason for that is consumers are buying more. Demand is up 30%. Everybody is buying things. We made it through the pandemic. Maybe your house is worth a little bit more. Maybe you sold your house. Maybe your retirement's up a little bit more, and so you're spending more. But we're clearly seeing that consumer demand is up. Consumer demand is up considerably. And that's what's really driving some of our supply chain issues is that, we just do not have enough trucks, and we do not have enough drivers for that strong of an increase in demand. And consumers are learning, so, sometimes you got to be a little bit more patient when you're waiting for things. And I think Mark makes a great point. We'd love to see more production here in America, because when you're producing things here in America, we can get it there by truck overnight, as opposed to waiting weeks or months for a product to be manufactured overseas and then come over and work through the backlog in our ports in California, and then finally get on a train before it gets to Chicago before we distribute it to you. So, we're here. We would love to have more workers, and I would advise anybody, if you're thinking about driving, we're still looking for drivers, so we can always use more truck drivers.
Right. I'm sure, and it does seem a bit that America's kind of going through some growing pains right now, and that probably has a lot to do with baby boomers getting older and that sort of thing. Kind of a staggering statistics, I think. In 2019, 10 million, it was estimated, 10 million seniors in the U.S. Ages 60 and older face the threat of hunger. And that means their food intake or eating patterns were disrupted during some point in the year due to resources for food. Now, that could be inflation or cost of food, a myriad of different issues there. But, and as I said, as the prevalence of baby boomers, as it's getting more and more of them are getting older, it doesn't look like that's going to get better through 2050. So, and that statistic is prior to COVID. So, Rob, I want to ask you a question, and this really goes to the food side. What are some of the things, and on top of that, what are some of the things that retailers are doing to help with seniors' ability to access food and the supply chain struggles?
Sure. And, they're doing a lot. So I'll just mention a couple. But, one of the things is their commitment. They had a significant commitment to, for example, food depositories before. And that commitment has expanded even in the face of this pandemic, even in the face of the challenges that we've all faced. So they have not abandoned or forgotten those who rely upon supplementing their cupboards through those sources, such as with the Greater Chicago Food Depository. We've also worked as an association with our federal partners to expand Supplemental Nutrition Assistance, SNAP, and with the state on those programs, to expand those programs and to smooth the allocation over a month, which helps us, frankly, manage the demand, and also makes it easier for those folks who are reliant upon those programs to not all be rushing at the register, on the first of the month. And so those are some of the changes, just a few that have taken place. You've also seen retailers implement, as I mentioned earlier, alternate shopping options, whether it's shopping hours for seniors, where they open a little bit earlier and try to emphasize those, but also remote options, curbside delivery, in-store shopping options. I'm sorry, out of store shopping options where you can just pick it up. So there's been a number of options that we've implemented to try to continue to meet those demands and help everyone understand that even though I'm not suggesting everyone doesn't feel some insecurity, but again that it can be met.
Right. And those options that the retailers are offering, I know, are so important to many of our members. I know even my wife takes advantage of some of those, like the delivery of food and that sort of thing. So appreciate that effort. Mark, I'm going to go to you and kind of rolling off of what Rob was talking about. Thanksgiving is coming, obviously, very soon, the holiday seasons. And with certain supply chain issues, there might be some empty shelves on certain products. And I know a lot of products like turkeys and whatnot are raised here right in Illinois. Are there certain shortages you see coming?
Well, it's a good question, and we've seen this kind of perfect storm hit the supply chain issue. And just to kind of give a little background on that, you start with COVID, obviously across the world, and shutdown of factories and stores, whether it's in the United States or abroad. You sprinkle in some of the weather events, whether it was the freeze in Texas earlier in the year or the hurricanes coming through the Gulf, because when you shut down gas and oil, for example, gas is a feedstock in plastic, in resins. So, you had those weather events and you throw in the blockage of the Suez Canal, you add this labor issue at the ports, the difficulty unloading container ships that are coming from abroad, whether it's from the East or from the West, and then you look at the workforce, and Matt talked about it. Today there are 10.3 million open jobs in the United States, and there's only 8.2 million job seekers. So if everybody who is actively looking for a job today got a job, there would still be 2.1 million open jobs. So just like there are openings in the manufacturing sector, and Matt talked about openings in the trucking section and trucking sector, and Rob has them in the retail. So trying to get men and women back into the workforce. And just one interesting note, there are 400,000 fewer Illinoisans working today than there were at the start of the pandemic. So we have to do something to get those individuals back into the workforce. But when you talk about products, I would echo again what Rob said and what Matt's talked about. There is plenty of food in particular being delivered to your grocery stores today. And so we ask people, don't hoard them. There's enough toilet paper and paper towels, and you're going to get turkeys and pumpkin pies and that kind of thing. I think the slowdown you're going to see a little bit more are going to be some of those other consumer products, particularly maybe some that are coming from abroad. What used to take a shipping container about 40 days to come from Asia, for example, and get through the ports and get delivered is now taking about 80 or 85 days. We've got dozens of ships stuck outside the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach. 25% of exports coming to the United States come through those two ports. Amazingly, the United States is the only country where our major ports don't operate 24/7. So the president has created a supply chain task force. They're working with the longshoremen and others to get those ports working 24/7. But then it goes. We've got to make sure we have enough truck drivers that can pick up and deliver. And the shipping crate issue, warehouses are full. And whereas they used to take a shipping container, they would empty it, put it back on, or reload it and send it back. Entities are now using those as kind of a longer term storage. So the cost of a shipping container, what used to be maybe $2,500 is now $20,000 or $25,000. So that factors in some of the costs. But what I would say is buy early, particularly those Christmas gifts that you're looking for. Certainly things that have chips in them. Maybe maybe they're a phone, or maybe there's some type of game station. Might be a little bit more difficult, but you shouldn't have an issue finding the food products that you need. But for those Christmas gifts, I would say shop early.
Right. Thank you. Matt, I'm going to go to you now. AARP represents all older Americans 50 plus in the United States, but that includes 1.7 million members in Illinois alone. We've heard the possibility of future wave of increased cost, and Mark kind of alluded to that with the oil and things that go along with that. But as the holiday season comes up and winter, what are the inflation? What's that going to do? What's the effect going to be on the trucking industry, do you see?
Sure. So in the long term it's going to mean higher prices for everybody. And we're already starting to see a little bit of that, right? We're already seeing some higher prices. I can tell you specific to our industry, because in order for us to keep drivers driving our trucks, over half of our members have raised pay by 8% or more this year. That's higher wages. Eventually that gets passed on to the consumer. One of the other issues we're dealing with right now, not only are we part of the supply chain, but we are relying on the supply chain for trucks and trailers. Mark mentioned the cost of a container going up. I was told yesterday a refrigerated trailer, which usually costs $40,000 or $50,000. Yesterday, I heard a member who paid $140,000 for something that he usually pays $40,000 for. Well, you have to recoup the cost of that in your transportation. So we know transportation costs are going up. I think everybody knows the price of gas and fuel is going up, and so that is leading to higher prices in the long term for everybody, as long as people are willing to pay that. And that's kind of where we're as Mark alluded to. We still think we're at least maybe a year or year and a half, 2 years out. But at some point, people will stop paying higher prices for things, and we could see some of this come back down. The example I always use is I've got a local restaurant that I go to. The service has gotten worse and worse, and now the food's gotten worse and worse. And at some point, eventually, I just stopped going to that restaurant. I pick up a steak at the grocery store and cook it at home. So I think that those are choices that consumers are going to be facing. And as we see them turn away from higher prices, that's when we'll see the prices start to come back down a little bit.
Right. Yeah. Great points. I want to remind everybody listening or watching, my name is Jeff Scott. I'm Associate State Director for AARP Illinois. We're fortunate to have with us three industry leaders, Illinois manufacturers, Mark Densler, Illinois Trucking Association, Matt Hart, and Illinois Retail Merchants Association's Rob Carr. Again, if you want to add a comment or ask a question, please do so in our feed, and we'll be getting to those. In fact, I'm going to get to one right now.
I'm a volunteer for Illinois AARP from Winfield, Illinois. My question is, can you explain the status of President Joe Biden's 90-day sprint to eliminate bottlenecks that have now contributed to the empty shelves and higher prices across the nation? And also, how is Illinois doing?
Okay, great question. And Mark, you started to get into this earlier. Matt, I'd like to hear from the trucker's standpoint. What do you think?
Yeah, this is a great question that we're certainly talking about is, why aren't we, moving? And Mark mentioned earlier that the ports, we're not operating, 24/7. And a lot of that goes back to the workforce issue. A real example I will give is this past summer, and this is on the other side of the supply chain, is our garbage. We had garbage stockpiling in Chicago at transfer stations waiting to be trucked to locations where there are landfills away from the city. And it was growing and growing and growing. And we were going to our truck drivers and saying, hey, we need you to work on Saturday, or we need you to work on Sunday, or we need you to work 24 hours a day. And today's workforce will just tell you, no, they're not going to do it. We can offer them, time and a half, double time, triple time. And the attitude of the worker and the priority of the worker coming out of this pandemic has changed. A lot of people are just, choosing to say, no, I'm not willing to do that. And so that is caught this. And that's the same thing happening at the ports that, for our ports weren't even open on Sunday for a long time, even though the freight was stockpiling. So at some point you have to incentivize or find more workers who are willing to deliver that. And so it's not just as easy as flipping on a switch and suddenly we can deliver things 24/7, because when the truck, picks up things at the manufacturer, it has to be a time when there's someone there at the manufacturer. And when we deliver it to the retailer, Rob's guys have to have someone there who's willing to unload that truck. And, again, those workers have to be willing to work those extra hours to help that out as well. So it really, again, comes back to our workforce.
Jeff, if I could hop in really quick, something that we did in the early days of COVID, and Rob was really leader on this, and Matt is increasing truck weight size. For example, we're 80,000 pounds, and there was a period of time where we increased truck weight. So you put more product on a truck, and then Rob also took the lead. There's a lot of communities, and Matt kind of talked about, you can't deliver, say, between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m., in getting some of the communities to waive that so you can bring product in 24 hours a day, as Matt said. So those are a couple of steps that Illinois took early during the pandemic, and could potentially consider again if needed.
Right. Little tweaks like that, which seem minor, make a big difference, I think. But no, I appreciate that. I'm going to go to another question now.
Light. I do live in Chicago. I am an AARP member. And what I want to know is how do all these cargo ships that we're seeing that are on the dock or in the water, how are they affecting and how are they affecting Illinois' access to food and essential items?
Yeah, I was going to ask any of you guys this question, but Rob, I'm going to pick on you on this one.
All right. I mean, clearly it has an impact. We get so much of commerce, for example, from East Asia. So it has an impact. I think when it comes to foodstuffs, though, we have a greater percentage of our foodstuff coming from in the hemisphere. That meaning coming from South America, Central America, and North. There's far more of that comes that way. That does provide some flexibility. Depending whether they're coming off the west side or the east side of South America, they can take advantage of East Coast ports, which don't have quite the same backlogs. But clearly, it has an impact. And I think, going back to the previous subject, that's what's important about the Biden administration's effort to try to squeeze more through the pipeline, to have ports work 24/7. But at the end of the day, I think ultimately the nation's paying for a lack of investments, particularly in the West Coast ports. We can work 24/7, but there's simply a limited number of available slots where ships can pull up, get unloaded, and move on. And we knew about those problems before, and they weren't addressed. And now they need to be addressed. So to go back to a comment Mark made, if you're talking about foodstuffs, I think we're okay because of that hemispheric alignment. But I think when you're talking about other non-foodstuffs, Christmas gifts, things like that, electronics, it is not too late to start Christmas shopping.
Right. My wife already has. So I wanted to, I feel like we could discuss for a couple more hours, but I want to make sure I told you guys a half an hour, so I want to live up to that. And we've already gone over a little bit. And I want to give you guys a little bit of time to close, but I really appreciate the discussion. I know our members are very happy about some of this stuff. We're all in a learning process on a lot of it as times are changing. So Mark, I want to give you time just to give a closing statement if you want to.
Sure. Well, again, thank you, Jeff and AARP, for your partnership, work together on a lot of issues. And importantly, my counterparts, Matt Hart and Rob Carr, who do a phenomenal job representing truckers and retailers. We're all in this together. We're all in this big ecosystem, and when we work very well together. And I would just say, and kind of building on a point that Rob talked about earlier, that I think you have to look back, and at least for the manufacturing sector, I would say 2020 and 2021 were years to celebrate manufacturing. And I know some people look at me and think I've lost my marbles. We're still in the midst of this global pandemic, and unfortunately, hundreds of thousands of lives have been lost in the United States. The worst economic and health crisis. But when you think about what the American manufacturing sector has done, throughout history, American manufacturers have answered our nation's call every single time. FDR called manufacturers the arsenal of democracy during World War II for their collective efforts. And manufacturers are still undertaking that type of operation today. And just again, in the last 18 months, created the fastest vaccines in history, going through all official channels and getting approvals. That is the way out of the pandemic. And we encourage folks to get their vaccines to protect you and your loved ones. We produce safe and nutritious food and got them on Matt's trucks and got them to Rob's stores, increased production of PPE and other products. And from my perspective, seeing what manufacturers did, liquor manufacturers started making hand sanitizer, or clothing manufacturers started making masks and gowns, or ventilators, you name it. And so really seeing the manufacturing sector pivot, much as we've done in the past when challenges have arisen in the United States. We're very, very proud of that. Again, the way we're working today on Facebook Live, the technology that manufacturers have created. Imagine if we didn't have things like Zoom, and what would happen with businesses and schools. And so while 2020 and 2021 have been challenging, the promise of American manufacturing led the way forward, and it continues today as we recover and rebuild from the pandemic. And with that, I just, again, wish everyone a very happy Veterans Day, and thanks to those that served, and wish everyone out there a very happy and blessed Thanksgiving as well. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Mark. And it does seem, and great points again, it does seem like American workers and businesses are up for this challenge, as they have been throughout history. Rob.
It's always hard to improve upon Mark's messaging. He's very good at hitting all the right points. So I will simply say, echo the thanks. We appreciate the partnership with AARP and others. I think it's this type of communication we've had it before, obviously, Jeff, you and Lori know that, but clearly having those relationships, having this kind of communication during an extended crisis such as we're experiencing the pandemic, I think is important for all of us. It's important for us to learn about, things we may not know about and how problems that might be emerging that we need to address. And I think it's important for your members. And hopefully it helps ease their concerns a bit. I go back to a comment I made at the beginning. For all our problems, for all our concerns, I think we can take comfort in the fact that at least in the United States, our system has been resilient. There are problems. You might get one turkey at Thanksgiving instead of two, but clearly we still have that resiliency in place, and I think it's serving us well. That creativity, not only in manufacturing and retail and transportation, but medical and other sectors as well. And so, we give thanks for that as we head into Thanksgiving, and thank you for our veterans again. And, thank you again to you, Jeff, and your team for this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Rob, and all you guys for and AARP and our members really appreciate support. And in items like this, events like this, it really helps put our members' minds at ease. Matt, do you have something in closing?
Boy, I can't say much more that Rob and Mark haven't already said. And again, it's an honor and privilege to be on with these guys, and Jeff, be on with you and your members. And thanks so much for all you guys are doing. I just, as we head into celebrate Veterans Day today and head into Thanksgiving and the holidays, just remind everybody that when you see those trucks on the highway, they're with you. We're delivering your stuff. We're delivering your stuff that Mark's guys are making and that Rob's guys are stocking on their shelves. Make sure you give them plenty of space. They're looking out for you. But we want to safely deliver the goods that your members need. And so thanks so much for being on today. And if you do get the chance, if you're at a rest area and you see a truck driver, or if you're at a truck stop getting gas and you see a truck driver, just thank them for what they do. Because when you do work in an industry where you're in your truck all day long and don't have a whole lot of interaction with folks, they really do appreciate the thanks that folks give them. So again, thanks for having me on, and we really appreciate it.
For sure, Matt. Those are hardworking men and women, and everything's appreciated. Thank you again, Mark, Rob, and Matt. This has been fantastic, and I appreciate all this back and forth and good information. Apologize to anybody out there if we did not get to your question or comment, but look for the next live Facebook event from AARP Illinois. And if you want to read more about AARP, just go join us at aarp.org/IL. Thanks, everybody, listeners, members, volunteers, appreciate everything. And as I said earlier, here we have more important information from Dr. Ezike concerning booster shots. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Hey there, Illinois. It's Dr. Ngozi Ezike here with a special message for all Illinois seniors about vaccine boosters. As the holiday season approaches, it's imperative that those who are eligible receive their booster as soon as possible. You may be wondering, if I need a booster, does that mean that the COVID-19 vaccines aren't working? Not at all. Vaccines continue to work well to help prevent the spread of severe illness, hospitalization, and death caused by COVID-19, including the Delta variant. If you received a Moderna or Pfizer vaccine and you're 65 or older, you're eligible to get a booster 6 months after your second dose. If you received a Johnson & Johnson vaccine and you're 65 or older, you can receive a booster shot 2 months after your initial dose. When it comes to choosing which booster shot you will take, the CDC advises that the same vaccine that was used for your primary regimen be used for the booster. But you do have the option, the choice, to mix and match boosters with a single dose of any of the authorized vaccine boosters. Remember that mixing and matching vaccines may be considered for the booster dose only. Boosters are free, and you can receive them at your local pharmacy, from your primary care physician, and many other sites across Illinois. As you prepare to gather with your family, your grandchildren, other loved ones, take every precaution to protect the younger children who are not yet eligible for vaccination. Let's all work together so we can have a safe and healthy holiday season.